Hi, today we're going to be looking at the Universal Design for Learning, and I kind of put this presentation together, so we'll kind of go through it. So first of all, what is universal design learning? So after kind of looking at a bunch of different resources and compiling kind of my thoughts on UDL, I came up with this general definition in creating a learning environment for a diverse learning community for all students to learn using different pathways to reach success. So then the question comes up as to how does universal design for learning help educators meet the needs of all students? Just some kind of points that I came across were by showing students information in many different ways, not having your typical lecture every single day in class. Also, it allows students different ways to express their learning, whether that's through the assignments you give or through the choice that you give in your classroom. It also engages students in many different ways, allowing them to kind of take ownership of their own learning and kind of take ownership of where they're at in the learning process. And then lastly, it also allows different learning styles to succeed because as we know as educators, not every student has the same way of learning, whether it be because of disabilities, learning gaps, and just in general, the way that students learn differ from each other. So all of those things kind of wrap up UDL and helps educators meet the needs of all of their students. So teacher instruction in many different ways with the universal design for learning implemented into their classroom. Here are just some examples. So for example, one way you might is through lecture, and that's going to help your auditory learners through videos, whether that be flipped or just videos that you're showing within your lesson. That helps those visual and lower level learners. Note taking, whether that be online or paper pencil, you can kind of distinguish that between classes, or it might be different for every student. Using hands-on demonstrations for your more kinesthetic learners. Also using assistive technology in your everyday lessons for those students who do have disabilities and might need different assistive technologies to help them with their day. Also flipped instruction, I'm a big fan of that. I use that in my classroom. And then also just having a more project-based learning within your classroom. So then looking at different ways to express that learning through students. So some examples I have are allowing students choice in your classroom. So allowing them to maybe trying to meet a standard through multiple different ways. Also project-based learning, as I kind of talked about above. So students working at their own level with their own creativity at the forefront. Also individualized assignments, so students are showing their level of expertise. Great way to show that is through Google Classroom, where you're kind of able to level each student and give them an individualized assignment or assign them one. Also throughout the units, allowing multiple different assignments, so that kind of goes along with that student choice. Allowing students to show their level of learning in whatever way that they think is the best, or whichever way shows off their strengths. And then lastly, allowing for many ways of presenting their information. So rather than just having all students get up and present in front of class, maybe allowing some students to make a screencast or do a voiceover in their presentation. With these different things for learners, it really allows any learner in a classroom to be successful. And it looks at us as educators and makes us kind of see the differences in each of the students and hopefully allows them to kind of hit their full potential. Looking at how to implement UDL in a school, basically kind of the basics. You'd have to redesign your lesson structure and kind of your curriculum, thinking outside of the box a little bit, creating choice within your classroom, maybe going more towards a project-based learning style where all students are creating in their own ways. Also making that learning individualized to each student's level. Also, realizing that it's a step-by-step process and it's not just going to happen overnight is super important. Also, setting clear goals as to what you want the outcome to be for your students with every assignment that you have. I think another way is gradual release of responsibility. Also, the last two, I think professional development is super important with a universal design for learning, and also just time to do it. I don't think we get enough time as educators to actually do some of these things. So time is of the essence. And then lastly, just kind of looking at the challenges to implementing a UDL in a district or classroom. The number one thing, in my opinion, is time, whether that's PD time or just time in general to look at your curriculum, look at your assignments, and how to transform them to fit the UDL model. Also, number two, possible to meet every need of every student. I think that's a tough one that we all kind of struggle with as educators. Is that possible to meet every single need of every student? And finding a time when we're okay with where we're at. I think buy-in from staff is huge for universal design for learning, and you won't always get it. Access to different resources. If you're expected to pull from different resources, then you need to have access to those different resources. And then lastly, I think support, whether that means team support in your grade level or content area, or just support from the above powers, whether that's your principals, your superintendent, whatnot. But I think support is super important, and all of those can present big challenges when implementing a universal design for learning into your district or classroom. And then here are my references. Mostly I looked at Rose and Myers chapter 4, but also just the stuff that we've kind of used in the classroom. So yeah, there you have it. That is my presentation on universal design for learning. Thanks.